Your brain spends its entire life in complete darkness. It's shielded from the outside world. And the only way to possibly understand what's going on outside is by using our senses. Sight, hearing, smells, touch, and taste. These are the signs that we can use to sample the external environment. But because these senses are not perfect at sensing everything perfectly, the brain receives incomplete picture of everything, incomplete pieces of information about the real world. And it's pretty scary to think that just imagining you are in your car driving somewhere and all of a sudden your visibility completely is poor because of fog. That's what's happening in the brain all the time. So it tries to fill in the gaps by using predictions to understand the external world based on our previous experiences and those things that are stored in your memory. It makes the predictions about what's going to be the next scene based on the most likely scenario. Like kind of like how the LLMs tries to predict what the next word is most likely going to be based on what you're typing. The reason the brain tries to fill in and predict the world all the time is because it wants you to stay alive. The amygdala, which is essentially a biological threat detector, it gets activated when it signals anything that has anything to do with threatening to your existence, potentially dangerous. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be dangerous because it may not be true, but potentially endangers your chances of survival. Your built-in threat detector, the amygdala, it reacts fast, sometimes before you're even aware of what's happening, to anything that might threaten you. It's helpful for survival, right? Like you don't want to be eaten by a really massive bear. It's also exhausting if it's going to fire back at you every time that there is an unknown. When you're faced with new situations like a new city, new coworker, or a new project, this increases dopamine release in the midbrain. Many people think that dopamine is only a pleasure signal, like something that gets released when you're eating a piece of chocolate cake that you love. But what it actually is a tool for helping brain make the best predictions about the world. It gets triggered in novel environments because it's responding to any sort of violations to your expectations. And this can be challenging if you take it in as a threat to your existence. Remember the times when you are shocked by something or you feel betrayed as someone and you ask yourself, like, how could they? And this is a prime example of your expectations being violated. Of course, this is an emotional charge, but of course, these are the things that help you remember much more strongly and more efficiently because your expectations are violated. And this is a brain's way of learning things very fast and efficiently. And because of it, you can remember it for longer. Why? Because you want to make a better decision next time. Scientists have thought of dopamine as kind of a teaching signal. And it almost like telling the brain, hey, this is where I got wrong, so make sure that you remember this so that I don't have to make the same mistake over again. The more wrong you are about something, the more strongly the dopamine gets activated. Your brain literally is designed to help you learn something better based on what you expected and how far off you were about the prediction. And it's understandable that people hate uncertainty. We live in a world of uncertainty and things are changing fast. Understandably, people don't like it. Scientists have shown that we would rather be in pain than not know what the outcome is going to be. In this particular example, I think it's an experiment from about 10 years ago, people are getting electrical shocks, which can be pretty painful, and I don't want that. Nobody would volunteer to get it for no reason, right? But then when the participants were able to predict when they were going to get a shock, their stress level was lower when they had 100% chance of a shock versus when they had a 50-50 chance of a shock. So essentially, people were more stressed out by the fact that there is an uncertainty of the outcome rather than certainty of pain. But novelty is not scary, it's more rewarding. This is where we come back to the initial conversation about fear and uncertainty. It's in your hands to decide whether something in front of you is going to be determined as positive or negative. Everything is very ambiguous and it's not always very clear, cut and dry, but you are the one that's interpreting whether some signal is positive or negative to you, and your brain responds the same way. because we don't ever get a full picture of anything. There's almost always uncertainty about the signal we're dealing with, right? But why is it that we're almost always responding that uncertain signal as negative or something to be frightened about? Why not just think of it as a teaching signal, like something, some data that help us to learn, an opportunity to grow and remember better? I mean, essentially, that's what the brain is doing to help us keep ourselves competitive and stay alive, right? At the end of the day, learning is about reducing uncertainty, and it's directly tied to calming your nervous system and stress response. In fact, when people who score higher on intolerance of uncertainty, they feel stronger fear. So one of the best ways to loosen that grip of fear is to stay curious, keeping an open mind to new possibilities, because you are most likely to be wrong. You're not going to have all the right information or complete pieces of information, right? And so it's okay to be wrong and potentially be wrong about something, because not only is it more likely, but also because it's not a bad thing that you might not know everything. It means that you are still learning and growing day to day. In your day-to-day life, you'll recognize there are plenty of chances and situations where you have an opportunity to choose how you perceive a potentially ambiguous signal. So you might consider someone that they don't like you and want to show you. But sometimes it could just be an ambiguous thing that you are putting too much meaning into it. Sometimes it might just be that you are making value judgments about something ambiguous and incomplete. It's easy to defend ourselves and justify ourselves because that's what we're doing our whole life. Our brain is exceptionally good at that. But if you're having trouble accomplishing what you want because of not willing to try something for fear of failure, then ask yourself questions. Is this really helping me? What other ways can I look at the same situation? Is it possible that I could be wrong about this person or this project? You can picture fear and curiosity as kind of the two sides of the same coin. When the world around us is uncertain, it's easy to feel fearful of it. But instead of avoiding, over planning, or freezing, train yourself to be curious. Ask yourself new questions, the things that you haven't considered, and it helps you open your mind up to things that you haven't considered before. And one of the ways to be that is playing devil's advocate, basically arguing the opposite of what your belief system is. What would prove me wrong? Ask yourself that. And you're more likely to be able to train yourself to think flexibly and predict more flexibly instead of just clinging to one side of the story. Essentially, you're debiasing yourself cognitively by counter-arguing yourself.